Well, as the country prepares for the final surge in border movements during the holiday season, many travellers, of course, are returning to work and schools set to reopen next week. The Border Management Authority is ready to implement the return phase of its festive season plan. Now, the authority has actively been preparing for this peak period in anticipation of increased activity at South Africa's 71 ports of entry. We're now joined by Doctor Michael Masiapato, the Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, to give us an update on the operational plan for the return of holidaymakers. Dr. Masiapato, thanks for joining us. Good to have you on the program.
No, thank you very much, Lian. We appreciate the opportunity.
So no doubt this is going to be a very, very busy weekend as we near the final days of the festive season. And of course, we prepare for the return of holidaymakers. How are things looking at the borders right now?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Lian. Yes, indeed, we had started with the return leg in terms of the implementation of our festive season plan. We are in the middle of it. As you will remember, we started on the 1st of January with the return leg. And of course, the apex date was actually Saturday as well as Sunday, of which we had some of the peak that we had to actually deal with. And of course, we are now ready to handle the last, I would say, the apex, which is going to be tomorrow, Saturday, together with Sunday. And on that basis, we will start wrapping up the plans as they were. Otherwise, everything is going according to plan. We have been receiving holidaymakers as well as those that went to our neighboring countries for Christmas as well as for the New Year. And now they're starting to return in numbers into the country.
Yeah. Any trends that you have noticed during this festive season? And of course, the big issue on different security concerns. Perhaps you can let us into that.
Yeah, so in terms of trends, Lian, one thing that we can indicate is that in the last period around this time, Lebombo actually surpassed Beitbridge in terms of numbers. And I suppose that was on the basis that last year there were some bit of uncertainty, especially for the ZDP holders who did not necessarily travel, as it were. But this time around, we have seen that Beitbridge has started to surpass Lebombo. But we also understand Lebombo had primarily been affected by the issues of the strike, particularly on the Maputo corridor, as it were. So on that basis, we have seen that Beitbridge is starting to kind of become the first, actually regaining their number one spot, as it were, during this particular period. In terms of the travels, for example, on air, I mean, OR Tambo still continues to lead. And of course, there has been no issues or glitches in terms of the facilitation of the movement in that front. The other thing that we can also indicate, Lian, from a trend point of view is the increased movement of people in our harbors, particularly at Durban Harbour as well as Cape Town Harbour, on the basis of the cruise liners that had exited into the oceans during this particular period. And of course, they are starting to come back, and we are very much ready to be able to process them as they come in. The other thing from a trend broad basis, Lian, is that our introduction of borrowed drones from the Department of Agriculture that we have been intensively using, particularly now with the return leg, they have actually served as a bit of a deterrent, and some of the people had started to slow down in terms of just attempting to walk back into the country illegally.
Now, when we look at the borders, and I go back to you talking about Lebombo, because we do know that there were issues at the end of last year with what was happening in Mozambique. Is everything sorted now? Because at one stage it was even closed. But if we talk about the smooth now moving between countries, is it fine? Is it open? Is everything okay? And can we say the same for the Zimbabwe side? Is everything going to be okay for those that are returning to South Africa or going across?
Yeah, let me start with the easier one, Lian. That is the Zimbabwean side in terms of Beitbridge. Everything is going according to plan there. We just had the biggest surge last week on Saturday. We were able to manage it with the rest of the people from the rest of the continent coming back. So there are no issues. We have demarcated our processing areas within the Beitbridge border post, as it were, small vehicles one side, pedestrians, people with buses, the trucks on one side. So on that basis, everything is fairly going well. Now, the issue that is very much very serious and very much concerning to us is the Lebombo port of entry. As we speak now, I would say that in the last 2 weeks, we had, I would say, just a week and a half, we have had a full stability a bit in a way, to the extent that we have been able to process both people as well as the movement of cargo, as it were. So that has been good news. However, I think you will be aware that the leader of the opposition just arrived yesterday at Maputo International. And on that particular basis, we are monitoring the situation very closely to be able to make an understanding as what is going to be the next move. At the same time, Leon, we do know on the 15th, which is next week, there is going to be the inauguration of the president as endorsed by the Constitutional Council that side. So those are the issues that we are closely monitoring. But up to this point, there hasn't been any much worry in as far as the corridor is concerned. It's only yesterday with the return that we were at least very much cautious with the movement of trucks. We continue to move them in batches, and there hasn't been any incidences. So on that basis, we are hopeful that the Mozambicans will be able to resolve the issues with the assistance of SADC and, of course, of the other sister countries. From where we sit, from a border management point of view, we are closely monitoring the situation, and we will be advised by our colleague on the Mozambican side if there is any challenge. And the last thing, just to say, Leanne, we don't necessarily close the port in the conventional way to close. What we do, we just halt processing on the basis of the security guidance we get from them.
Yeah, certainly. We did see that happening with lines and kilometers of trucks trying to get through and a lot of frustration. But obviously that's been cleared. And as you say, that's something that we're keeping an eye on. You mentioned a bit earlier, which I found quite interesting, was that this is the very first time that drones were actually used to assist with border management. How effective have they been? I'd like to just sort of focus on that a little bit in enhancing security and streamlining operations at the ports of entry.
Yes, yeah. You know, Leanne, this has been very much helpful. So what we did, we borrowed drones for our top 5 land commercial ports. That is your Beitbridge, Lebombo, Oshuk to Eswatini, Maseru Bridge to Lesotho, as well as Kopfontein to Botswana. So, I mean, yeah, so on that basis, we have been using them. Firstly, for the exit, we use them as part of our corridor management strategy, just to make sure there is no congestion, just to make sure that people, as they are queuing towards the port, they follow protocol, they follow all the traffic rules and all of that. So it has been very much helpful. But at the same time, we use them also to make sure that we intercept individuals who will try to return to their countries without coming through to the port, either because they overstayed or because their passports expired whilst they were in South Africa. You will remember they need to declare themselves to the port. We need to then do a process of V-listing, meaning that taking their fingerprint, obviously getting them banned for 5 years. So we're able to intercept a lot of people. We brought them into the port. We did that process. Now, with the return leg, Leon, this is very much critical. They've been very much helpful because we were able to launch them into the air, into the port, across the ports, and all of the vulnerable or the key vulnerable segments around the ports. So what actually they helped us with, they helped us to actually pick up what we will call facilitators of illegal migration. So one thing that we used to struggle with is you will normally arrest people and then you will then do the deportation. Sometimes you find that even the people that we've arrested, amongst them are the facilitators. And therefore, the process does not end. You deport them, they go facilitate them again, and it becomes a cycle. So this time around, what we did, as we had the eye on the sky, we were able to identify those facilitators, explicitly follow them through the drone, and be able to guide the border guards, the police, and the defense force on the ground, and make sure that we nab those key facilitators. A typical example, just in the past few days, we're able to nab around 27 key facilitators around the Limpopo River. So what we do, Leanne, something that we are doing differently, we don't deport the facilitators. What we do is we arrest them, we open a case for aiding and abetting at the police station, and we make sure that they actually follow the process of the law and they face the full might of the law. So that is one thing that is very much critical.
All right. I'm going to leave you because the next question I've got for you, I don't think you have an answer for me now. Numbers, do we know what it looks like at this point in terms of exiting and entering South Africa at this point at the different borders, or is that something that you'll only get to us after all is done?
Yeah, so Leanne, we do have the numbers, but the numbers we have are obviously not yet audited and consolidated, but we can indicate OR Tambo still leads. We have done over 600,000 already
Wow.
in terms of the return leg, and of course followed by Bridge, which is just around 300,000, and then followed by Libombo, as it were, in terms of the top three ports, as it were. But otherwise, you'll remember that we said we are anticipating 6 million, which is the pre-COVID numbers. When we consolidate after the 15th, we should be able to come back to the country and indicate how we run the operation and how the figures ultimately look like.
All right, Doctor, thank you. Thank you so much for talking to us. Dr. Michael Masiapato, he's the Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, just giving us an update on the operational plan for the return of holidaymakers, particularly over this weekend. There certainly is going to be a big rush coming back to work. Schools are opening, and also giving us an understanding of how things have been going so far.